You're listening to an Anderson Entertainment production.
This episode,
we're looking to the skies in FAB Facts.
We're under fire and feeling the pressure in the Randomeister.
And we've got a free chapter from Thunderbirds, Peril in Peru.
Oh, that's all coming up in Pod 191.
Of the FAB Gerry Anderson podcast.
Let's get started. Let's go.
Spectrum is green.
The Gerry Anderson podcast with Jamie Anderson and Richard James.
Hello and welcome, Podsterons, and hello and welcome, Richard James.
Oh, thanks very much. Thanks for having me back. I think it's my trial period is now over, is it?
It is. I think you are now officially a co-host of the Gerry Anderson podcast.
That's brilliant. Thank you so
Congratulations
much.
on getting the job after your extended trial period.
Yeah, thanks.
Hello, Podsterons. I guess this is the end of your extended trial period as too.
Yeah.
So you're now locked in.
That's it.
To listen to this podcast for the rest of time, or as long as we can keep talking about all things Gerry Anderson.
Yeah. No going back now.
But my name, by the way, is Jamie Anderson, in case you weren't sure.
Yes.
I've already said who you are, because I welcome you.
Could I say it as well?
Go on.
Did you? Oh, well, it's Richard James, of course.
Yeah, brilliant.
Of course it is.
And also, ably but quietly, we're joined by Chris Dale, who is over there.
Oh.
He's got...
Oh, yeah.
Now, see, he's reading from a giant book, which I think is the Book of FAB Facts. I don't know what he's doing with that. And then he's reading a bit and then closing his eyes and doing a sort of meditative pose. That's rather odd.
Is he trying to memorise it, do you think?
I think he might be entering his mind palace of FAB Facts to try and remember.
I hope he wipes his feet first, yeah.
Yeah, but I know, but if he does that, he won't need me with my book flicking.
I think that's the whole point, isn't it?
All right, Richard, thanks. Well, hopefully Chris will finish his memory exercise by the time we get to the randomizer, which comes at the end of the show when he presses a big red button on his randomizer and randomly watches a random episode of a random Gerry Anderson series and comments accordingly. Also coming up in Pod 191 of the Gerry Anderson podcast are the following items read to you now by Richard James.
Yes! I'm not even going to read them, I'm just going to say it verbatim. And I'm sure if you've listened to this podcast 190 times before, you could probably join me. We've got, of course, the randomizer coming up a little later on with Chris Dale. We've got some news from the Gerry Anderson universe, of course, because there's always something new happening in the wonderful worlds of Anderson. We've got a free... Now, here's something special. Normally we have an interview, but today a special feature, a free reading chapter from Thunderbirds, Peril in Peru. Yeah, it's not even a reading.
It's not just a reading, it's narration and full cast.
Exactly. So there's a little freebie for you for today, something special. And we've got FAB Facts, of course, coming up in just a little while. And we'll be hearing from the oil in our engine, the grist in our mill, our lovely listeners, the Podsterons, who've been emailing us at podcast@gerryanderson.com. They've been posting on our Facebook group and tweeting us and hashtagging us Gerry Anderson Podcast. All that coming up.
Very nice. When you said the person who was the grist, I thought you were going to say Grist Dale then for a second.
Yes, of course.
Not that he would have appreciated the gag because he's still got his eyes closed.
He has, hasn't he? Yeah.
There you go. Well, in fact, I'm going to have to borrow the book from him. I'm going to try and sneak it out of his hands. Just give me a second.
Don't disturb him. Oh,
I've got it.
You got it. Well done. No,
thankfully,
he didn't even notice.
I know, he hasn't flinched, but thankfully now, that means we can go into this week's FAB Facts.
Oh yeah, I hadn't thought of it like that.
Now, time for this week's FAB Facts.
The book's a bit clammy, Richard.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
What's he been doing with it?
Well, I'm just holding it, I think, but it's obviously very intense memory activity over there.
Well, fair enough.
Anyway, thankfully, I've got a clammy book of FAB Facts here. I'm going to flick through the book. Rich is going to shout FAB at any random point during the flicking, which will bring me to a halt, and hopefully upon that page we will happen upon a FAB Fact.
Yeah, great.
Hence the name of the section.
I see.
I know. It's taking you 190
Makes sense
pods.
now, yeah.
Richard James, are you ready to shout FAB?
Born ready.
Great, then here we go.
FAB!
Ooh.
How's that?
You're good at landing in the supermarionation era, aren't you?
Well, I do enjoy it, yes.
Well, many fans do.
Yeah, of course I do.
And many of those fans of the supermarionation era will by now undoubtedly have noticed that for most close-ups on vehicles in flight, the model was hung in front of a painting, a backdrop painting, in fact, that would then be revolved at speed in order to suggest the movement of the craft. Very, very clever.
Sure.
Called a rolling sky.
That's it.
However, in the early days of supercar, it was a different story. With some exceptions, close-ups of the craft in flight mostly involve the model being hung in front of a back projection screen, on which was then played the image of a real sky and clouds. Very different method. There's a lot of it, in fact, in the opening and closing titles, for instance, as supercar dives and swoops and soars. This footage did not come from a library, however, but was specially shot for the production by Dad and his cinematographer, John Reed.
Okay.
And it proved to be one of the most dangerous shoots of their careers.
Go on.
Yeah. So, having rented a plane to take them up to 16,000 feet to get the shots, with the camera securely attached to the aircraft and filming through an open door... I know, chilly. The first shot came when they decided to ask the pilot to bank the plane left so that they could get some shots of the ground as well. Accordingly, the pilot did so.
Yes.
Without waiting to make sure that they were both strapped in as they wanted to be.
Oh, no.
Fortunately, as the pilot had of course expected being a professional, the centrifugal force prevented Dad and John from falling out of the door, and they managed to get the shot they wanted without dying. But soon, Dad noticed that John was having trouble breathing.
Oh.
When he asked John what was going on and if he was all right, John said, Gerry, I don't know how to tell you this, but I've only got one lung. What a time to make that confession. Now, obviously, flying at 16,000 feet with the door open and without an emergency oxygen supply was causing John considerable distress. So Dad raced forward to tell the pilot of the situation and get him to land. The pilot's response was basically, yeah, fine. Slight problem, though. My engineer, the flight engineer, has got a cold, and if we lose height quickly, we're going to blow his eardrums out.
Right, okay.
So, to accommodate...
It introduced a bit of jeopardy there.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I mean, it's very Gerry Anderson worthy, I would say.
It really is.
So, to accommodate poor John Reed and the flight engineer, the plane had to circle for 45 minutes, descending gradually so as not to cause any more distress to either man, until they made a safe landing and John got the medical attention which he so desperately needed.
What, another lung?
No, I assume some oxygen.
I see.
Presumably, though, Dad then had to go back up at a later date to get the rest of the footage, but probably without John now knowing about his mono-lung status.
Yes, wow.
Now, despite the increased use of the rolling sky in the Supermarionation shows following Supercar, back-projected aerial footage did sometimes still turn up. For instance, you can see real sky and real clouds from the windows of Fireflash in Trapped in the Sky, Thunderbirds. In a similar vein, there's also aerial shots filmed over Portugal in the Thunderbirds Are Go movie as Zero X comes in for landing.
Oh.
And in the same film, you'll see a shot of the Zero X lifting body exploding, and that, again, was shot against real sky in that case.
Okay.
Another real sky thing which really works because it's so beautiful with proper sunlight, with daylight, was the famous launch of the rocket in Doppelganger, which Derek did outside against real sky. And we've got some great photos of that shoot. It was just amazing. So although it was certainly easier to work with a painted rolling sky background, it does help to bring the shows to life a little, to see real specially shot sky from time to time. And that all goes back to Supercar and a dangerous flight for Dad and John Reed.
Crikey! Well, that's a bit of a story, isn't it?
It is indeed.
But tell me, why did they go to Portugal to film the sky for Thunderbirds Are Go?
Well, why not?
I suppose why not? You can write it off against tax, can't you?
Go for a little holiday. I'm pretty sure they shot that from a helicopter because I think I've got a picture of the helicopter somewhere.
Right.
So,
nice.
Yeah, it's very cool.
Nice
isn't
work
it?
if you can get it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But I mean, Dad would have loved that flight because he was so interested and so obsessed with flying. And having that open. But
right.
I have to say, being up in the air with the door open, I did that a few years ago in a chopper for the York Maze when they had a Thunderbirds version in 2015.
Oh, yes.
And we went up in the little tiny bubble chopper with the door open so that the guy from the news crew could film out. And Oh, I've never held onto a strap so tightly in my life.
No, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Wow.
Pretty scary.
And they're quite
stuff.
noisy, aren't they? Helicopters. I have to say, I've been in a helicopter too, and they make a hell of a lot of noise, don't they?
I bet it was pretty noisy in that aeroplane with the door open as well.
Oh, God, yeah, true.
Oh,
yeah.
It's given me a little bit of a shiver, that.
Absolutely.
So,
I'm just going to shut the door if you don't mind.
yeah, put a scarf on as well while you're at it.
There we are. Yeah, that's better.
Goodness me. Anyway, there you go.
Now.
Did you enjoy that Fab Fact? I feel like you may possibly even classify that as a Fab Fact. Is that fair?
Go on then. Yeah, fair enough.
Yes, brilliant. Okay.
You've done it at last.
Well, it's only taken over 100 of these, but we finally made it to a Fab Fact, which seems the perfect time to bring this week's one to a close. That's the end of this week's
Sky Fact.
Oh, I went for flight.
Fact.
Yeah.
Sky Fact. Yeah, well, that's fair enough, I think. Now, you're listening to the Gerry Anderson podcast. You've just heard the wonderful Fab Facts, of course. My favourite part of the podcast.
You're such a fibber.
We've got some news coming up. We've got the randomizer just around the corner, and a little something special for you. An excerpt from Thunderbirds. That's, I think, is it out now, Jamie, or coming up shortly? Peril in Peru.
Peril in Peru is out and available, but if you have not yet heard it or purchased it, then this is your chance to hear Chapter 1.
Perfect. In the meantime, we've heard from our lovely Podsterons. Of course we have. They've been emailing us and posting on our Facebook page as well. For example, Mark Perkins emailed to say, thoughts on the live podcast that you mentioned, I think either last week or the week before, Jamie. Most people who are staying in Birmingham will be travelling there and will only have booked one night in a hotel, i.e. the Saturday night, says Mark. So either day would do, but not too early on the Saturday or people won't have arrived. I mean, he's got it all planned out, thought out, doesn't he?
Yes.
Similarly, if it's on the Sunday, people will be travelling home, as that weekend is a very expensive one to stay in hotels, so it needs to be earlier in the day to accommodate this. Cheers, and that's from Mark Perkins. So he's suggesting either not too early on Saturday or fairly early on Sunday. All right.
I'm going to say it's going to be early mid Saturday afternoon on the 16th in Birmingham.
Oh,
I think
before
like
the
that's
concert.
a good time. Yeah, so in the hours prior to the concert. So if you're going and you want to do this, make sure you're going to get there early enough. You know, sometime just after lunch, I guess.
So if you're not staying overnight, actually, you can just come up Saturday, do the podcast, join us for the podcast, do the gig, and then be on your way.
Exactly. And I just feel like Sunday morning is not going to happen. I can't specify why, but I feel like I might be a bit tired.
I see, a bit tired and emotional.
Yeah, possibly.
Yes. Simpsons Clips 24 says, so I was looking at the Gerry Anderson Twitter account's latest twupdate when I happened to notice that it said every theme tune for Stand By for Action with plenty of incidental music and surprises. Could this include Lavender Castle's theme tune? I'd love to hear that being performed by a full orchestra.
Well, I did say every, so...
Oh, right.
I mean,
I
would infer from that yes, that might be the case. And it might be that right now, the composer of said theme might be working on a special full orchestral version, possibly. I couldn't comment either way.
Nice. That's very nice. Over on our Facebook group, Trevor Knight says, I thought Jamie might be particularly interested in this current eBay item. And he posted a picture. It's a Joe 90 figure, Jamie, from 1968. Vintage Gerry Anderson, rare from Pedigree Toys, in used condition, £60 if you want it.
Oh, sorry, what are you saying? I just suddenly came over all bored then.
Very rude.
Thanks, Trevor, anyway.
Chris Turner's emailed to say, I'm really looking forward to... Now, Chris Turner's an Anderson insider, and he's been given a little sneak preview of something coming up a little later this year, which I'm not going to go too much into detail for, but he says he's really looking forward to it. It sounds intriguing, and I really hope it'll also be produced as an audiobook.
Oh, you're such a tease, aren't you?
Yes, it's strange, isn't it? Exciting times, he says. Well, if you're an Anderson insider, you'll know.
If you're not, you'll have to wait.
Yeah, that's right. And that's fair enough. You'll know in the fullness of time. You just don't know now. That's all it is, yeah.
Exactly.
Over on Facebook, Steve Beresford has created a poll. This is following last week's podcast. So he says, to answer the burning podcast question, can you also do a Richard James and roll your tongue? And he posted a poll. 29 votes said yes, they could. 10 said no, they can't. Jonathan Bell said I could touch my nose with my tongue.
Me too.
And I said, well, to be fair, I could probably touch your nose with my tongue too. So, there's nothing special in that, is there?
Well, that's a nice thought, isn't it?
It is a nice thought. Now, I've also been asking our Podsterons who their favourite guest has been over the last almost 200 podcasts, and which was their favourite randomiser, and also perhaps what we should do for our 200th. And I've got a few ideas here. Gary Hodgkinson said he started late with the pods, but went back and listened to all that had gone before. The best interviews were with Mummy A, of course, and Derek Medding, so there have been others. It's hard to pick a randomiser as Chris Dale is so good at what he does, but if I could remember which one, there was one that I nearly jetted minestrone soup out of my nose.
That sounds like a winning randomiser to me.
That's right. So whichever one it was, it's that one, he says. Miles Parrish said I started listening. Since I started listening, I've caught up and now never miss an episode. My favourite randomiser was Flight 104. Chris's riffs on the Slack season had me in stitches. I have a few favourite interviews, Denise Breyer, Lindsay and Justin T. Lee and Sophia Miles amongst them, and once I finish Space Precinct, I'm planning to go back and listen to all the interviews about that, but my favourite interview was Sophie Aldred, when she name-dropped Graham Bleethman, whose cross-sections books were a huge part of my childhood. I knew I was in good company with this podcast. As for the 200th, he said, I shall defer to the wisdom of others. I do hope one day to be in the UK at the same time as a live recording. Simon Allen thinks we should do a podcast clip show with linking narration for the 200th. Alex Pass says, I've been here from the very beginning, you poor guys. The Pod 200 interview should be Richard James interviewing himself, but in the style of the video, Who on Earth is Tom Baker? Okay, I'll look out for that.
There you go. Easy.
Yeah, he says, we definitely need a randomiser clip show with Chris's best bits too, though I suppose we should really save that for Pod 201. Yes, because that would be the 200th randomiser, of course. Because there was no randomiser in the first episode.
You're right.
So he's one behind us. And finally for now, CJ List says, I've been listening since the beginning. Having the chance to interview people like Shane and Denise while they were still alive is certainly a highlight, as well as people like Gary Newman and, of course, Mummy A. The randomiser has always been thoroughly entertaining too, revealing little tidbits from the Anderverse that could slip past normal ears, like Scarlett's ice cream fixation, for example. Yeah. So there we are. Many more of those coming up a little later on. People's memories of... it sounds like we've died, doesn't it? But we haven't. People's memories of past podcasts and guests and what they would like to see for our 200th. Keep them coming in.
Yes, please do. Love getting messages and emails and posts and all that sort of
course.
stuff. It's always nice to see, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's lovely.
Would you like some Gerry Anderson news?
Well, actually, I'm a bit short of news. Have you got some?
Oh, yes, I've got at least 4 pieces of news in this week's Gerry Anderson news. So
that would be lovely.
Here comes some Gerry Anderson news.
Great!
It's this week's Gerry Anderson news.
Newsy news.
Better. It's better when you do it, and it feels a bit weird when you leave me hanging.
What?
So thank you.
Yeah, really? Sorry. All right, I'll leap in next time.
Yeah, just do it.
Okay.
Now, for some weeks, I've been threatening that there's going to be a concert announcement about a very special guest.
Yes!
And it's been delayed for various reasons, mostly logistical. But I can say with some confidence that this week we're going to do it, because I'm going up to Birmingham myself for some associated activity on the 9th. So I'm hoping on the 10th we will be able to get that announcement out there into the world, which will be rather marvellous. So I'm very, very much looking forward to that.
Lovely.
If you would like to get tickets, you can go to gerryanderson.com/concert or go to the Birmingham Symphony Hall or B Music concert page and buy it from there. We would love to see you. It's all of the show themes, lots of incidental music, some very special Easter egg type treats, and it's perfect because it's on Easter Saturday.
Oh, is it? Oh, I see.
Yes, more information on its way. We'll tell you all about the themes and other specials that are coming over the next few weeks. But yes, hopefully announcement this week. Now, connected to the music, some rather sad news, I'm afraid, that the lovely John Taylor has passed away. Now, John, part of the husband and wife team, John and Jean Taylor, who did so much of the amazing sound effects work on the early Supermarionation shows, up to including Thunderbirds. Fantastic pair. John was 100 years old.
Amazing. Wow.
And I'm happy to say that we managed to get an interview with him for the documentary. He probably gave us one of the most fun lines of the entire documentary. Real character, amazing history, and great work, which you hear all the time, and you continue to hear in the Thunderbirds audios. In fact, you will hear some of John's work in the Peril in Peru chapter that's coming up later on.
Ah, lovely.
So we send our love and condolences and thoughts to John's now widow, Jean, and family. And send them all of our best, because they were a lovely team, and they've been together a very, very long time. So thoughts with Jean in particular. Now, it's not all sad stuff, of course. We've got some new bits and pieces coming along, particularly for Thunderbirds and Space 1999 fans. 3 new T-shirt designs are launching today. The Air Terranian symbol from Thunderbirds and the Alpha and VJC symbols logos from Space 1999. You can just pop along and see them on the front page of the store from today. Also this Wednesday, Scarlet buckles up. That's the name of an upcoming John Reynolds print taken from, I believe, TV21, special edition of 50 worldwide, handmade silkscreen print by John Patrick Reynolds. It's a really lovely image. Just search Scarlet Buckles Up from Wednesday.
Wow.
As you mentioned, Dickie James, Anderson Insiders, there's a preview of the film poster for Gerry Anderson and Life Uncharted, which comes to BritBox in the UK on the 14th of April.
Yeah.
You can go and see it there. You can sign up to get extras and previews and advanced looks at things from as little as £1 a month. Just look at the menu at shop.gerryanderson.com and you'll see an Anderson Insiders link there to sign up. And you can cancel any time. So there we go. Nice. That's it. Mixture of interesting, good and sad news today.
Yeah.
Again, thoughts with John Taylor's family. But that is now the end of this week's Gerry Anderson News.
That was the news. 4 bits of news.
Thank you. It was actually sort of 5, wasn't it? But
was it? Oh, well, I lost count.
I'm not sure the Anderson Insiders information was news necessarily, because we had it last week, I think. So.
Okay.
You were correct. Anyway, do carry on.
Good. Yes, thank you. Now, you're listening to the Gerry Anderson podcast. I think we've established that already. But one thing you can do to keep us both very happy is to subscribe to us on whichever platform you're listening to us on. Leave us a lovely review or a rating. We do love to read them, and let us know how we're going. And also, copy the link on all your socials so your friends get to hear us too. Now, back to our lovely listeners. They've been in touch again. Of course, Rob Barker over on our Facebook group says, he says, I hope this doesn't sound like I'm being a creep, but I felt down this morning. The situation with the government hasn't helped. So I listened to my go-to pick-me-up, and it's hard not to feel slightly more positive about things when listening to Jamie and Richard. Great show as always. Thanks, guys. Well, that's nice, Rob. Glad to hear we're cheering up your day a little bit. Email from, this is from the Isle of Wight, Paul Hyde.
Ooh, hello, Isle of Wight, Paul Hyde.
He says, hi, Isle of Wight, Paul Hyde here. Having just listened to the podcast, I say yes to a scrapbook. Now, this was an idea of yours, Jamie, to perhaps collate some of the material you're using for the documentary into a scrapbook, and he thinks it's a very nice idea. And as for Fab Live, a recording, this is the podcast live recording, would be better on a Saturday afternoon, as most of us podders are travelling up on Friday, he says. I know some will be travelling up on the day, but definitely Saturday afternoon would be good. I've listened to all the podcasts, and my favourite one is the one with Gary Newman. I'd like to know, how do I send in my That Was the News little ditty? I don't know how to do it. Yours, Isle of Wight, Paul Hyde. Well, it's quite easy. I'm sure it isn't too long. Just send it into podcast@gerryanderson.com. You know, attach it as a WAV file or an MP3.
Or a voice note from your mobile phone.
Yeah, quite easy, I would think. And in a similar note, this is from China. It's Paul Hyder. This is to stop all the confusion.
Yes.
So he says comedian Frank Skinner got a talking SPV for his birthday this week.
Oh, it must have been a Vivid Imaginations one from the 90s.
Right.
Maybe.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
Now, some more ideas from our wonderful Podsterons about their favourite guests and their favourite randomisers and so on. Ralph LB says, I've been here since the beginning. The campaign to get some form of GFI out there starts now. All right?
I'm not even responding to that.
Well, he says, I, the fan, demand it. I'll write it for free if need be. The house on the moon must be brought into light. More seriously, he says, well done on getting to podcast 200, as we will be in 8 or 9 weeks' time. Stuart James Lusher says, I've been listening to every episode of the podcast. I've enjoyed them all, and I also enjoyed every randomizer episode. And I'd like to say well done to Richard, Jamie and Chris with getting to pod 200. I mean, it's a little previous, isn't it? We're not quite there yet.
It's nice then, though.
It is nice.
It's good confidence.
Tom Hodden says, well, I'm not sure what should be in the 200th pod, but I dare say some people might like to see something fab and live adjacent to the pod.
I'm not sure I can manage both in one afternoon.
Yeah. Although if Richard, he says if Richard would be so kind as to pass on mine and other podders' heartfelt thanks to all those who have contributed to the podcast over the last few years for their hard work, it would be appreciated. So there you are. I'm passing that on in Tom Hodden's name. Thanks for everything,
Tom, and thanks for everything, all those who've contributed.
Yeah. Now, talking of Tom Hodden, you may remember last week I contributed something of my own, but Tom's been back in touch and sent us his very own Quickfire 5. Right, are you ready for these, Jamie? This is the nightmare round. Oh no, you ate cheese before going to bed and now your dreams are haunted by horrors beyond imagination. Number 1, would you rather be alone on Moonbase Alpha or forever have Twizzle for company?
Moonbase Alpha, please.
Would you rather only be able to speak in Unwinese or be the only one not speaking in Unwinese?
Oh.
Wow.
That is nightmarish.
That's tricky, isn't it?
I'll speak Unwinese. I'll find a way around it.
Oh, really? You could always write things down, I suppose, couldn't you? You have an earworm that you can't shift, but which tune do you choose? Shooting Star or Avenues and Alleyways?
Oh, Avenues and Alleyways, but only just.
Oh, okay. Number 4. Who is that you keep glimpsing in the corner of your eye? Is it Candy and Andy or an alien from UFO?
Oh, alien every time. Keep those little creeps away from me.
And finally, which is scarier, Mysterons on the moon or rock snakes on Mars?
Oh, Moonsterons, I think.
Yes, I agree. There we are. A very special, nightmarish Quickfire 5 from Tom Hodden. That would have been more appropriate for Halloween,
That's exactly what I was about to say, yes.
Yeah, should have saved that one. Thank you again, Tom, for sending that in. I'm sure there'll be more in due course.
Yes, thank you, Tom, in inverted commas there.
Yeah, I did see on the Facebook group he's rather terrified of meeting you in Birmingham. He's coming to the concert. He thinks you're going to throttle him.
I couldn't possibly comment.
There we are. More messages a little later on as well.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Tom. Appreciate that. Now, your reward, Tom, and all of you for listening, in fact, Podsterons, is a chapter of Thunderbirds Peril in Peru. We very much hope that you've been enjoying our series of books and audio adventures adapted from the novels of John Theydon. So far, as many of you will know, the current range has included Thunderbirds Terror from the Stars and Stingray Operation Icecap. Oh, and of course, Thunderbirds Peril in Peru. Now, we've also just announced Stingray Monster from the Deep. So there's lots of these out and lots more audio stuff on the way. Many more books. Now, Peril in Peru was originally published in 1966 as Calling Thunderbirds. And the story has been lovingly adapted by our very own Randomeister, Chris Dale. The audio version was directed by future podcast guest Sam Clemens, son of the late Brian Clemens. It stars John Culshaw, Justin
Past podcast guest,
yes. Past podcast guest John Culshaw, past podcast guest Justin T. Lee, future podcast guest Joe Jameson, past podcast guest Wayne Forrester, future podcast guest Genevieve Gaunt, and future podcast guest Anna Bleong Brophy.
Great. Do they know that yet?
What a cast. No, but they will do now. Anyway,
exactly.
Peril in Peru is available now from the Gerry Anderson store in physical version or digital download from bigfinish.com. We are all very, very proud of this production, and we would just like to give you a free chapter to whet your appetite. So
great.
We hope you enjoy this FAB chapter of Thunderbirds Peril in Peru.
You're listening to an Anderson Entertainment production.
Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thunderbirds are go.
Look, Scott, tremendous subterranean pressure is building up off the Peruvian coast.
Dad, this could mean great devastation.
Gone? Dear me.
Where is the secret base of international rescue?
No! If those boys shouldn't come back.
Anderson Entertainment presents Thunderbirds Peril in Peru by John Theydon. Adapted by Chris Dale. Narrated by Wayne Forrester. Thunderbirds. Peril in Peru. Chapter 1. The Earth Shakes. Remote from shipping lanes, and looking a mere pinhead of green and white from any supersonic plane screaming far above, the tiny tropical island, which was the secret base of international rescue, lay like a jewel on the calm surface of the Pacific. Scott Tracy, returning from a routine security check of the island, walked up the palm-flanked causeway from the lagoon and went through a wicket door into the hidden hangar in the base of the cliff below the concrete and glass house. Gordon and Virgil, two of his 4 brothers, wearing light blue overalls, were busy servicing Thunderbird 2, the huge jet aircraft which could convey heavy rescue equipment to the 4 corners of the world at 5,000 miles an hour.
It sure does my heart good to see folk working. But where's Brains?
He's been up in the lab all morning.
Holding a computer conference. He's probably got some weird and wonderful new bee in his bonnet.
More likely he's giving Em a pep talk, telling him how to do their job. I'll go up and see him. Hey, I've been thinking...
Gee, so that was the strange noise we heard.
Yeah, I figured it was a hurricane blowing up, but it was just Big Brother's brain awakening from an age-long stupor.
Wise guys, huh? Hey, remind me to punch your noses sometime when I'm not so busy.
Scott entered the laboratory workshop. Brains, the young scientist and inventor whose genius had created the wonderful craft and equipment which served international rescue so well, was bending over a bench beside a computer. His dark hair was ruffled, and his cheeks were smeared with grease.
Say, Brains!
Quiet, please. Scott crossed the room and peered curiously at the complicated piece of equipment Brains was manipulating. Colored lights were flashing, and a needle was tracing an erratic line on a graph. Crockery rattles, picture falls from wall, few bells ring. Scott slowly turned his gaze from the instrument to Brains. Had it happened at last? Had overstimulation of his mind sent poor old Brains round the bend? The young scientist seemed to become aware of Scott's anxious scrutiny and blinked at him through his big horn rims. Hello, Scott. I didn't hear you come in.
Nevertheless, you told me to shut up.
Did I? I'm terribly sorry, Scott. I did not intend to be rude, but I guess I was so engrossed in my new invention. This is my seismoclinometer.
Your what?
It's a device for giving warnings of impending earthquakes, Scott. As you know, we've had warning systems for hurricanes and tsunamis and volcanic eruptions for a long time now, and hundreds of thousands of lives have been saved in consequence. But so far, earthquakes have proved an insurmountable problem.
But you've surmounted it.
I am encouraged to hope so, Scott. An hour ago, I thought I detected indications of a tremor in Japan. Just on the off chance, I radioed a warning to the Japanese geodetic control. A few moments ago, I registered a 4th-degree shock.
4th degree? What's that mean?
Not very serious, I'm glad to say. A slight shaking that would be noticed by most people indoors. A crockery would rattle, and pictures fall from walls, and...
A few bells would ring? Oh, so that's what you were muttering about just now.
Yes, Scott. But if the shock had been a severe one involving damage to buildings, my warning would undoubtedly have saved lives.
That's great. You're a knockout, Brains.
Little of the credit is due to me, Scott. Seismologists have been trying for over 100 years to get warnings of earth shocks. I've merely collated their data and fed it into a computer. Even so, my system is far from perfection. Yet for thousands of years, birds and animals have been known to flee from an earthquake zone before the actual shock occurred.
You're too modest, Brains. This device of yours seems to be the cat's whiskers. Can you give me a demonstration?
One can't conjure up shocks to order, Scott. But we could try the Pacific seaboard of South America, for instance. There are constant small tremors occurring there. First degree, which can be recorded by seismographs only, or second degree shocks felt by a few people on the higher floors of a building. Indeed, it is said that in Chile and Peru, the natives only begin to worry when they don't feel a tremor for some time. Oh.
What's the matter?
Look, Scott. That light indicates that a tremendous subterranean pressure is building up off the Peruvian coast. Earth shock imminent. Epicenter south-southeast of Lima.
Will it be a bad shock?
Degree 6 or 7, possibly. If the center is deep in the mountains, perhaps it will not be serious. But there may be damage to badly constructed houses. I must radio a warning.
How long before it hits them?
One cannot be sure. It may be an hour, perhaps less.
Okay, get that warning through, Brains. I'm going to see Dad.
Scott hurried through into the lounge, where his father was dictating a report to Tintin, the lovely raven-haired Eurasian girl who often served as his secretary. Jeff Tracy looked up, a faint smile creasing his craggy face as he sensed Scott's excitement.
What's eating you, son?
Scott quickly explained Brains' earthquake forecast.
I knew he was working on something like that, but results seemed incredibly remote.
Dad, this may be a false alarm, but equally, it could mean great devastation, even if they do take notice of Brains' warnings and evacuate the danger zone. They may need all the rescue workers they can get.
And you figure international rescue should be right there, just in case it's needed, huh? You're right, son. You can get to Lima in 20 minutes from takeoff. Get cracking. I'll launch Thunderbird 2 as soon as I hear from you what equipment will be necessary to supplement local resources.
Okay, Dad. I'm on my way.
Scott hurried across the lounge and stood in one of the semicircles formed on the polished floor by the scalloped edge of the carpet, his back to the wall. He raised his hands and grasped bracket lamps fixed to the wall on either side of his head. Hidden machinery whirred softly, and a section of the wall at his back pivoted, taking him with it. The inner side of the wall panel slid smoothly into place, and the lounge looked just as it was before, complete with an identical pair of wall lights. Beyond the wall, Scott, still grasping the lights, paused for an instant, looking down proudly at the slim length of his rocket plane Thunderbird One, which stood on its tail in a vast concrete pit hangar beneath the house. Then he removed his hands from the lamps, and a moving bridgeway carried him across the gap into the nose cone of the 90-foot vessel. In the small, equipment-packed control cabin, he pressed a button on the arm of the gimbal-slung pilot seat, and a panel slid back to reveal his uniform with the extended hand insignia of International Rescue on the blue shoulder band. While he put on his uniform, Thunderbird One moved automatically to its launch ramp, and then slid smoothly downwards out of the hangar into the launch pit beneath the swimming pool. In the lounge above, Virgil and Gordon, still in their greasy overalls, alerted by the Action Stations alarm, had joined their father and Tintin. Jeff briefed them on the situation.
You two boys stand by. We should be hearing from Scott inside 20 minutes, if we don't get a prior call from the danger zone.
They watched as the swimming pool moved slowly sideways, sliding beneath the stone-flagged patio to reveal the gloomy launching pit below. There was nothing for them to do Automatic controls ensured trouble-free working. Rocket motors thundered, amplified by the confines of the pit. The red nose cone of Thunderbird One appeared, gleaming in the sun. With a whooshing roar, it slowly rose on flaring rocket gases, then accelerated towards the cloudless blue of the sky. Jeff turned and crossed the room to his desk. A flick of a switch, and a brass ashtray rose like a hinged flap to expose a microphone speaker.
Space station from base. Come in, John.
On the wall above him, one of the portrait photos of his 5 sons suddenly vanished, to reveal a television screen on which was the image of John Tracy in his blue and lilac space station uniform.
Yes, Father.
Scott's blasted off for Peru. Brains thinks an Earth shock may be imminent. Keep in constant touch with him and monitor local radio stations. If anything happens before Scott gets there, report to me immediately.
FAB, Father.
A bleeping came from Scott's portrait, and it too vanished to reveal another monitor screen, showing him sitting at the controls of his craft.
Thunderbird One to base. Changing to horizontal flight. Setting course north-north by west.
Okay, son, carry on. But for once, I'm sure hoping Brains is wrong.
Scott leveled off at 2,500 feet and headed north-north by west. Although the powerful jet could fly at higher altitudes than any military supersonic craft, it flew at a height of 2,500 feet only when leaving base to avoid detection by radar stations. Only by taking such precautions had Jeff Tracy been able to keep his headquarters a secret from the world. He knew there were many unscrupulous people who coveted the secrets of international rescue. 15 minutes later, Scott saw the snow-capped peaks of the Andes rearing their jagged teeth above the clouds. But the ocean below him and the coastline were hidden by the mist that continually shrouds the Peruvian coastal zone, due to the cold Antarctic currents meeting the warm equatorial waters. He switched on his microphone.
Space station from Thunderbird One. Approaching destination. Estimated time of arrival, 5 minutes. Ground visibility, nil. Reducing speed to reconnaissance and descending to 500 feet.
FAB, Scott.
Scott fired his retro rockets, and the great wings unfolded. The aircraft dipped and glided through the mist.
Any communication from destination?
The authorities acknowledge Brain's warnings and have evacuated all possible danger areas. Touchdown at the airport, Scott. They're keeping runway 5 clear for you, although I emphasized you did not need a runway.
FAB, John.
Through the grey mist, he could now see the creamy waterline and the yellow-white of the coastal desert strip. Thousands of seabirds screeched and whirled above the Guano Islands, startled by his screaming jets. He flashed over the ancient port of Callao and saw the tall, graceful white buildings of 21st century Lima towering through the mist against the dark backcloth of the Andean slopes. The blinking beacons of the airport came into sight. He overshot, marking the cleared runway, and circled in a wide radius. As he zoomed back, preparing to fire the underjets to make his vertical landing, it happened. The black and white surface of the airfield split jaggedly across, as if it were a sheet of paper slashed by an invisible knife. A giant stratoliner on the adjoining runway teetered and then nosedived into the gap. For an instant it hung there, its great tail pointing skywards like an accusing finger, and then the gap snapped shut again, crushing the front half of the plane like gigantic nutcrackers. The tail crashed to the tarmac and burst into flames. Sweat started on Scott's brow as he lifted Thunderbird One and flew on.
Another minute and I might have been down there. I'm sure glad that was an empty plane.
As he flew low over the coast, he saw that the sea, so calm when he had come in, was now violently agitated. He swung inland again. Here and there he saw a building that had crumpled like a house of cards. But for the most part, they had withstood the shock. For the people of this country had learned by many a bitter lesson how to build in order to withstand constant tremors. When he approached the airport again, he saw that the fire tenders had already extinguished the blazing plane. 2 other planes were canted on smashed wings, but there was no other sign of damage. The pre-stressed ferro-concrete control buildings on their solid bedrock foundations had stood firm. Scott called the tower.
Lima Tower from Thunderbird One. Is it safe to land?
Thunderbird One from Tower Control. Shock was of minor duration and has now subsided. It is safe to land.
Firing the underjets, Scott touched down between the tower and the burned-out airliner. As he opened the hatch and dropped to the ground, a jeep chased across the airfield and screeched to a halt. A uniformed official alighted, saluting.
Welcome, Senor. We are much indebted to your so wonderful organization for your timely warning. It is incredible that you should learn of this thing, but undoubtedly it has saved much loss of life.
I'm glad to hear it. Just how bad is the damage, Senorita?
In the poorer quarters, it is considerable. But thanks to your warning, we were able to evacuate the inhabitants.
Casualties?
Many, but mainly minor injuries with which the medical services can cope. A very unpleasant experience, but fortunately, not a national calamity, Senor. So far, there have been no deaths reported.
So far? You mean?
That we must wait for reports from outlying districts before we can be sure. And there is one building in the town on which the rescuers are still working. A small restaurant in which a wall collapsed. Patrons are buried. Until we have got them out, we cannot be sure if there are any fatalities. Her Excellency the Mayor has asked me to request that you will stand by in case we have difficulty, Senor. We understand that your wonderful organization has unique equipment which can deal with almost impossible situations.
Sure, I'll stand by. Take me to this place. Maybe I can be of some assistance. But I'd like a hand with my mobile control equipment, just in case it's needed.
Certainly, Senor.
The official blew a whistle, and airport hands hurried up. Scott's control consoles were loaded into the jeep.
And I'd like a guard put on my craft to make sure no one takes pictures of it. That is vital, Senorita.
It shall be done, my friend.
The official gave an order into a microphone on the jeep, and 2 airport police cars drove out to take up guard stations by the rocket plane.
You see, Senor, we treat you like royalty. Today you are our saviors. We shall be forever grateful to you.
Moments later, the jeep, with screaming siren, hurtled down to the airport and down the wide tree-lined avenue leading to the city. Here and there, a small roadside building lay in ruins. The concrete of the road was cracked in places, and a huge cornerstone from a high building had plunged deep into the earth. Palm trees had been snapped like matchsticks. On the outskirts of the city, among the older and smaller buildings, the damage was greater. The narrow streets were blocked with rubble, and stolid-faced residents were poking about in the ruins of their homes, seeking to salvage what they could of their belongings.
Is it not incredible what damage nature can do in a few short moments, Senor? She is angry and shakes the earth, and there is little we can do but flee for our lives. These people here have international rescue to thank for the fact that they are still alive this afternoon.
Well, I guess that's why we exist in a way. Our main job is rescuing folk who are in danger. But maybe prevention is better than cure.
Scott knew that the credit was Brains's, and his alone. But for Brains's latest incredible invention, Lima might have been mourning its dead tonight. The jeep swung into the entrance to a public square, which had been cordoned off by green-uniformed police. The screaming siren parted the crowd that had gathered there. The barrier was raised, and the jeep tore round the square, in which fountains still played as they had done for centuries. On the far side, heavy rescue appliances were standing by the ruins of a cafe, whose once brightly coloured awning protruded like a tattered banner from a heap of masonry and rubble. As the jeep slammed to a halt, an injured man on a stretcher was being carried from a hole, which had been tunnelled into the ruins, towards a waiting ambulance. An official-looking grey-haired woman in civilian clothes pushed through the crowd of rescue workers and held out a welcoming hand to Scott when he alighted from the jeep.
Ah, international rescue. The honor is great for me to meet you, senor. But for you...
Scott was spared further embarrassing congratulations by an excited shout from the ruins.
Bueno, the last survivor we think has been located. Ah, and he is still alive, senor. It is with great relief that I tell you that your so welcome services will not be needed.
All the same, Senora Mayor. I'll stick around for a while, just in case we're needed elsewhere.
We shall be honored, my friend.
While the injured man was being eased from the ruins, Scott returned to the jeep and contacted his father to make a brief report.
Okay, Scott. Stay there as long as there's half a chance we may be needed. It's great to know we've already saved more lives than we ever could have hoped to save if we'd been called in after the quake. I guess Brains ought to be given the freedom of the city.
Scott signed off and returned to the ruins to watch the final rescue operation. The victim came out on a sling, strapped to a stretcher, carefully guided by rescue workers. He was unconscious. His pale, handsome features were grimed with dust. His fair hair matted with blood. Scott guessed he was a year or so older than himself. As the man was carried past him towards the ambulance, Scott found himself thinking there was something vaguely familiar about that good-looking face.
Who is he?
An English tourist, we believe. We shall not know for certain until we have examined his papers or he recovers consciousness, senor.
There was a pause while the injured man was gently removed from the stretcher. Then his lips moved, and he muttered, half deliriously.
Penny. I must tell Penny.
As the ambulance drove off, Scott looked after it thoughtfully. Where had he seen that face before? Then a shout announced that still one more victim had been found deep down under the ruins, and he forgot about the fair-haired young man. But he was to remember him a few days later.
Nice.
Well, I hope you'll agree, authentic and exciting.
Yes.
Which is really kind of what we're after when it comes to Thunderbirds.
Absolutely. It's kind of old but new, isn't it? That's what I find so exciting about these audiobooks.
Exactly. I mean, it's the whole kind of Anderson thing, really, is old but new, which is
true.
the best place to be. Now, if you want to hear the rest of Peril in Peru, you can get it from the Gerry Anderson store as a lovely hardback book or a CD set, or from bigfinish.com as a digital download. There will soon be also an Amazon Kindle option available in the next couple of weeks if you want to read it on your Kindle reader thing. It's just called a Kindle, isn't it?
It's called a Kindle. Yeah, it's just called a Kindle.
Or your Kindle Reader app, which is also a thing on other devices.
Yeah, it is. Yes, that's right. I've got one on my iPad. You don't have to have a Kindle to read stuff on a Kindle, as it were.
There you go. Brilliant.
No.
And this episode of the Gerry Anderson podcast has been sponsored by Amazon Kindle. No, it isn't sponsored by, but they probably should sponsor us right now.
Yeah. Oh, of course they should. Yeah.
Anyway, that's that. I hope you enjoyed it. Who knows what's next week?
Yeah. And so, how long would it take to record the entirety of a story like Peril in Peru?
So because of COVID and cast locations, normally these are done in 3 or 4 one-day sessions.
Okay.
And the cast are not always together. Now, Genevieve and John, as Lady Penelope and Parker, tend to record together because they've got a lovely chemistry. Makes sense for them to be in London together when that's possible, but mostly it's remote recording. And just whenever and however we can. But hopefully you can't tell that it's remote recording in multiple sessions. It feels quite cohesive.
Exactly. That's great. Yeah, very nice. Good. I look forward to hearing the rest of that. But not for free.
No, I'll sting you a copy. Just don't tell me.
Oh, you're very kind. You're very kind. Now, back over to our post bag. Jackson has been in touch. Now, here's an interesting thing. He says, "Hi, Jamie and Richard. I hope you're both doing well. On Pod 190, it was mentioned that one of the listeners would like to see the LGBT community being represented next in Anderson Productions after they've already advocated for women's rights, addressed racial inequality, and have produced disabled characters. Jamie then answered that there is a representation in the form of, is it Toru from the
Toru
Gemini Force
Takatani.
One books?
Yes.
There you go. He says, I was really excited when I read Gemini Force One and had my first LGBT representation in an Anderson production. Yeah, it does count, doesn't it? It meant that Anderson Entertainment was supportive of the LGBT community and that you are open to having LGBT characters. However, he says, I feel I must say that I hope that it's merely the start of representation in Anderson productions. Since Anderson Entertainment produces and represents so many shows, movies, books, audio dramas, etc., I feel that having one gay man is simply not enough, especially since the LGBT community is far more diverse than only one gay man. Furthermore, in my opinion, he's more of a minor character, and I think it would mean a lot to our community to have a main Anderson hero represent them. As a member of the community myself, I know for a fact it would mean the world to me, since I spend a lot of time engaging with the worlds of Gerry Anderson. Personally, I think Firestorm is the perfect opportunity to create more representation. All the best from Jackson. He says, P.S. Please stop producing so much awesome merch. My bank account can't take much more.
Oh, sorry, Jackson.
Sorry about that.
Yes.
Stop making stuff. I mean, a very valid point. I suppose the thing is, we're left with the legacy we have, for good or ill, over those last 5 or 6 decades that were informed by the attitudes of the time. And as he quite rightly says, sometimes they were pushing against the envelope and getting much greater representation in there than other shows. But obviously they were still of their time. Going forward, I think he's right. Perhaps we should hope for more diversity and inclusion, shouldn't we?
And that is absolutely part of what we are doing, because it's in the same vein of everything that was done before. But like you say, Richard, it's tough to reverse engineer stuff into existing franchises. And those franchises are often controlled by licensors who don't want things to be reverse engineered for fear of, just changing the nature of what was produced back in the day. But it's very much part of our ongoing slate of development. I can assure you of that in multiple areas, and just in a way that feels natural to the forward-looking eyes of a modern audience.
Yeah. Quite right too, quite right. Now, back to our Facebook group where I was asking people their favourite randomiser and favourite guest and so on. James Pilson Wood says, I'm all up to date. I don't think the live podcast and randomiser can be beaten. So funny, and in person too. Wonderful experience. Here's to 200 more. Yes, it was fun. Mark Perkins says, I've been here since the start and even listened to a few. Even re-listened to a few. He says, Shane Rimmer was a joy. As to the 200th, in one early pod, you floated the idea of a joint episode commentary with Chris and Jamie, but I don't think you ever mentioned it again. How about that for an idea? Well, that'd be fun. That's tricky, isn't it, logistically at the moment, to get us all in the same room at the same time.
Although we will be in the same room at the same time.
Yes.
At the concert now. Do we risk trying to do something new and previously untested? Let's see. Could be fun. Could be chaos.
Could be fun. Could be a disaster. Yeah, that's right. Alan J. Porter says, I've listened to them all, though currently running a bit behind as I'm up to pod 186.
Catch up, Alan.
Yeah, he says, my favourite interview is Sophie Aldred. And finally, Farashimbo says, every single one, starting with Pod 1, my favourite interview is still Mummy A. Isn't that lovely?
Lovely
Lots
Mummy
of love
A.
for the Mummy A interviews. 3 of them back in Pod whatever it was.
I have to say, Mummy A is a backbone part of the upcoming documentary, Gerry Anderson and Life Uncharted. So if you enjoyed her podcast interview, I think you'll get even more insight in the documentary.
She was there. She was
indeed.
Lovely. I'll be reading some more of those out next week, actually. Just people's hopes for the 200th and some of their favourite moments from past podcasts. Because that's just quite fun to look back, isn't it? As well as looking forward. There you go. That's the Anderson thing again, isn't it? It's fun looking back and looking forward.
Yes, absolutely. I think we're doing a very nice job of that all round.
Yeah.
Now, I think it's probably time that I try to wake Chris from his... Whoa!
Oh, crikey! Oh, no!
Whoa, all right.
What on earth is... Steady? Wow.
He's just thrown the book of Fab Facts at me.
He's literally thrown the book at you. Chris!
I've never seen Chris in such a rage.
No. I hope he calms down in time. What's up?
I think... He realised that he was reading and memorising the Fab Facts that have already been Fab Facted on the podcast, so he's wasted all that time.
Yeah, so he's annoyed at himself, not necessarily with you.
Chris.
Oh, Chris, don't worry.
It's fine if you be annoyed with yourself, but don't take it out on me with the FAB Facts book. So
exactly.
Goodness me. Okay, well, don't worry, because you don't need to memorise it, because I'm here every week to read it, and Richard chooses the page. So
yes, simple as that.
Okay, I think he's calming down. Anyway, we know what would really calm him down. Will be obviously letting him do his randomizer, where he brings over his giant randomizer machine, hits the big red button,
love that.
And it tells us about an episode. Let's hope it's a good one that'll make him happy. So, Chris Dale, or just Cross Dale, should we call him?
Chris Cross.
Chris Cross Dale.
No, let's cross to Cross Chris. No, I don't know.
Anyway, here's the randomizer.
Bit crass.
It's just a hairline fracture. The doctors say it'll be fine in a couple of weeks.
Oh, well, that's good. But what a shame you keep doing this to yourself, Jim?
I'm surprised the flight controller gave you press boys the go-ahead to come and see me.
Well, as soon as we told them who we were and what we wanted to ask you to do, they jumped at the chance, is what we'd be saying if we'd actually bothered to ask them.
That camera looks pretty ancient.
Oh, this? Oh, no, this isn't a camera. This here is the randomizer, and I'd like you to press the button today.
Well, I'd like to help.
Uh-huh.
Maybe in about 10 or 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think...
going to have to hurry you?
No. I'm sorry. I can't do it.
Oh, go on, please.
It's okay. I feel fine now.
That's it. Thank you. Oh, by the way, Jim, what's your favourite Anderson series?
I can't remember. You don't understand. I can't think.
Okay, well, never mind. Right, let's see what we have to... Sorry?
What is this?
Oh, Jim. Jimmy Jim. You know what you've done? You've only gone and produced my favourite episode of this particular series. Tell me, what's your secret?
Well, I can only put it down to an electrical fault in the main circuit.
Oh, well, never mind then. Here's Stingray.
What else could it have been?
Well now, it's not very often that I can say that the randomizer produces my favourite episode of a particular series. Generally I would say that only happens once per series, in fact. I seem to recall we've had my favourite episodes of UFO, New Captain Scarlet, and possibly one or two others.
Approaching target area.
Terrorhawks would be one. But now, here we are, with my favourite episode of Stingray. And it is an episode that I don't hear too many people talking about as an absolute favourite. But I just feel this episode does so much with a relatively small idea. It's so stylish, it's so slick, it's so well produced. So I'm going to have a lot of fun talking about this one today.
Missile ejector on target. 5 miles. Firing now. Contact.
And we open with this alien chappie in a rather cool submarine with as the title suggests, a big gun strapped to the top, blowing up random islands. And of course, as a kid, you kind of accept the image that you're about to see here of where the island, having been hit, it just sinks beneath the water, as if, you know, an island just sort of sits on the top of the water. As a kid, I didn't know any different. It was only a few years after this that I would have found out.
Station force 10 plus.
It's not quite how islands work.
Turning to Solister to report.
But this chappie is very happy with his day's work. He's just blown up an island. And here's one of the first highlights of the episode. This Barry Gray score for this episode is possibly one of my favourite episodic scores of any Anderson show. I think perhaps only rivaled by Captain Scarlet and Shadow of Fear. It's just an absolutely gorgeous piece of music, and was reused quite frequently throughout this series and also through Thunderbirds. As well it should have been, because it's absolutely glorious.
To Solar base. Approaching the inner sea of Solar. Present depth 2 miles below bottom of Pacific Ocean.
And this chap, Maritimus, in his cool submarine, he's talking into a radio, which I've always felt looks like the...
Maritimus to Solar base.
Oh, a microphone, I should say. I've always felt that it looks like the front of a Klingon battlecruiser from the original series of Star Trek. But this is a lovely touch. Maritimus' submarine is now in a subterranean sea, and it's so dark down there we have to have landing lights. landing lights. This is brilliant, leading us to the city of Solastar, which is a giant starfish
to Solastar base
that they've turned into a city. There are other buildings around the perimeter, but yeah, there seems to be a giant starfish that these people all live in, and it's not explained, but it's another gorgeous image, and I suppose it makes a lot of sense for an undersea race to make use of
disembarking
something like that. If the starfish is dead and they can live in it, well, I've got no problem if they want to live there.
All Solastar, I, your mighty leader, summon Corda, my advisor.
Here we are in Solastar.
Corda, report to your mighty leader at once.
And here's another example of what I mean. It's just Corda could have been with his mighty leader already having this meeting, but we have to have this lovely shot of Corda walking through a garden, essentially. A garden in an underwater city to find...
Mighty leader, I am here to advise you. May I see your face?
The mighty leader himself, reclining on his comfortable garden furniture.
We are ready to launch our attacks on the Terranian.
On which more later, because I love the design of this episode. I love the look of the city of Solastar, exterior and interior, but I also love the look of these characters.
Our might.
Some people have said they look a bit like Crichton from Red Dwarf. As a kid,
chain reaction,
who was not yet familiar with Red Dwarf, I always just thought they looked like what Lego figures looked like if you took the hair off.
Now ready to receive Maritimus.
Of course. Maritimus, the mighty leader awaits you. Maritimus comes now, mighty leader.
I tell you the thing that Maritimus does, mighty leader, before you see him do it. I like the redundancy of that, but I also think it's there because...
May I stand before you?
Mighty leader has his back to
see the face.
The entrance.
Truly brave man.
Oh, you handsome devil, you truly brave man. You've earned yourself a medal, 'cause you blowed up the right thing.
For your bravery and devotion to duty,
oh,
you will have the honor to lead the attack on the surface land. You will begin...
So that thing you just didn't really count. That was just a test.
Most of the area known as the United States of America.
That was a test. The test went so well, it's now Operation Obliteration for the rest of the world.
I'll call you with more details soon.
You might say, well, it's only two guys. This is a stingray race. There's only two of them. This is going to take a while. No. These guys are serious about world domination. You can tell because there's three of them.
We got trouble, all right.
I don't think there's ever been more than two aliens in a particular stingray episode.
Let's check it out.
Yeah, can do that, Atlanta.
I know there's always... our entire civilization is just behind that door over there. But, yeah, there's actually 3 aliens in this one. It's... I know it's such a small thing, but it really is. It really... Just that one extra puppet somehow really does make this feel a bit more of a determined attempt to take over the world.
And investigate mysterious destruction of the deserted island of San May.
Which is why I really wish these aliens had come back, because aside from Titan, the rest of the underwater aliens that we meet during the course of the series, they don't feel particularly organised. They don't feel like a particularly strong, overwhelming force that really could pose a genuine threat to the Terranians. I mean, even in the Invaders, where it's probably the next biggest attempt to take over the world, there's a lot of talk
1,000 feet down
by these aliens, but there's not really much action. These guys, there's a lot of talk and they back it up with action.
It's moving real fast, Troy, but I don't figure it. It's constructed of a material I can't identify.
Right. Let's go down and take a look.
It's made of orsonium, because I do love that craft. There was a little, I think Fanderson put out a little metal vehicle model of that craft, and I don't know where mine is. I have a feeling I might have lost it, which is a shame, because even as a kid, I really wanted a model of that craft to go up against my Matchbox Stingray.
Craft increasing in speed.
Okay, let's get after it. Increase rate of dive. Main ballast 3,000.
And luckily Troy and Phones were already on patrol with Marina and of course Oink, because we couldn't leave Oink behind.
Say, the other craft is rising.
Yeah, I can see it at red 002. Keep it a safe
distance. It's this the combination of this theme and the militaristic air of these people. I know they call the city Solastar. I've heard some sources, I think possibly the Stingray comic, call these aliens trematodes. Whether you want to call them trematodes or solastarians.
For the west coast of America.
I don't know, but
I don't like it one bit.
Oh, I do. I just wish they'd come back, because it's just so in your face and on the nose and so blatant what these people are. How do we know they're bad guys? Well, they travel around in submarines with just great big guns strapped to the top. Oh, it's beautiful. It's gorgeous. And this music is wonderful.
Maritimus to Solistar Base. Preparing missile ejector for attack on west coast of America.
The whole thing? Well, the west coast of America is quite small. It seems to amount to this one little power station on the coast.
To firing. Setting missile to full power.
Again, I think there is a mention of it later in the episode. They mention these people also have surface agents. It's a very quick mention, our surface intelligence. So they are comparable to Titan and Titanica, but I would love to...
Holmes, number 1.
Oh, I would have loved to have seen them come back. I would have loved to have learnt more about them.
10, 9...
Again, lovely artful direction here.
Fire 1.
3, 2...
We get these angles, different angles on Maritimus's face as he does the countdown, and then later... Oh, I love that the missile fires just as the craft is hit by a Stingray. I'm sorry, I'm all over the place with this because I love it so much.
Good shooting, Cap.
But yeah, later on in the control tower when Marineville is under attack, you get the same kind of angles. Ooh. So that's the submarine blown up. Luckily, Maritimus is in a very cool escape capsule, and when I say cool, it kind of just looks like a cigarette end that someone's put wires on.
Up survivors.
Survivors? No survivors today.
No sign of survivors, Troy.
I'm not surprised.
Oh, well, we tried.
Samples of the wreckage for analysis. We've got to find out what this is all about.
Thank goodness they saved that coastal power station.
Maritimus to Solistar. Come in, Solistar. Come in. Nothing.
And I almost feel sorry for him here.
Must return immediately to base and warn them of the Turanian craft.
I think because the aliens have been established so well and Ray Barrett is doing such a good job that, for a moment you almost feel like that they are heroic and you do side with them just for a moment there. Meanwhile, back in the city of Solistar, in what looks like the Capitol room.
But this is fantastic. Are you certain this is so?
My favourite moment of this episode, I think.
Peter, Maritimus has been attacked by a powerful Turanian craft.
In that case, we must locate the Turanian vessel's base.
Because these aliens, well, the mighty leader, he has the most wonderful garden furniture. And it is lawn furniture. He has a swinging bench.
All the time we wait
that he can sit on, and his assistant there was sitting on. Now, you notice in an earlier scene that the bench does not automatically swing itself, but whenever the mighty leader is sat on it, he is swinging backwards and forwards.
Have the location scanners picked up the terrain?
It's doing it now. So it's a wonderful
coast of the United States of America.
I don't know what you want to call it. Disassociation between the idea of these people as a really fearsome militaristic force and their mighty leader who invests in really nice garden furniture for him to swing on.
Area in missile ejector number 2. This Marineville must be wiped out.
Again, great performance by Don Mason, but I just can't shake the fact that this is a man with a very camp voice, sitting on bright pink lawn furniture, swinging backwards and forwards, and talking about his missile ejector. It's beautiful. It's just, and I can forgive it. I can forgive it because it's just so pretty.
Reference 9. Why, that's one of the deepest parts of the sea in the entire world.
Yeah, having salvaged some of the wreckage, we have established where the craft came from. Because it uses very rare material, we know that it comes from a very deep part of the world. Oh, and there it is. We have another missile ejector. I don't know how many they have in this city.
Tacked for launch in 20 seconds.
But we went from the lovely glory shots of Stingray cruising along after it's left the ocean door to suddenly this shot of the missile ejector just very slowly and deliberately creeping out from behind a rock. And here we are now, about to take aim at Marineville, because their surface intelligence not only knows about Marineville, but has told them where it is.
9.
Attention! Marineville tracking station calling. Unidentified craft located in our area.
Emergency! Battle stations 1, 2, and 3.
Oh, battle stations 1, 2, and 3? I don't know what that means.
Fire!
Normally it's just battle stations. But I guess it means do it really quickly, because the drummer is really going for it here. Also interesting, again, that was the shot where I mentioned the interesting camera angles, but also it's Lois Maxwell doing the Marineville tracking station voice.
Missile launched. Impact 10 seconds.
Not David Graham. David Graham seems to have sat this episode out, as he sometimes did with early Stingray episodes. He's not in as many as you think. He's in a lot. He's probably in most of them, but he does miss some. I love this as well. Marineville has sent their slowest interceptor missile to intercept the missile from the big gun, and it made it, but the control tower's taken a fair bit of damage.
But only just. Call Stingray. Tell him where...
You thereby get the impression that the rest of Marineville has as well.
Power to Stingray. Come in, Captain Tempest.
Especially with the lighting effect as the missiles exploded over the complex, and you get almost the sort of lighting effect that you would get during an eclipse.
The tower, Troy.
Must be a radio fault.
Get the radio division to send up an emergency antenna. We must renew contact with Stingray.
Yes, sir, but it'll take some time.
Just relay the message, Lieutenant. I'll fix the schedules.
I like as well there that you can get a view of the Marineville Control Tower food dispenser.
Pod vessel 20 miles from coast.
One of the options on which is Cool Cola. Because yes, I am watching this episode in HD, actually.
Picking up a sound in, Troy, and it's identical to the vessel we blew up the other day.
Does that mean we get to go and blow that one up too? Is that how it works? Yeah, it does. Because there's no real formal declaration of war between these people and the Terranians. It's just...
Close them in fast.
Kill each other on sight, basically.
Let's shadow him. That way, he'll lead us to his base.
We can kill more people. Yeah, I love that it's just... There's no time for any of that stuff, because the episodes are so short. We can't really be doing with that. Let's just blow each other to bits. Whoever gets off the missile first wins.
Mr. Solastar, returning to base. Being shadowed by Terranian vessel Stingray will lure enemy to our domain and then destroy it. If it survives the pressure of our deep waters.
Oh, so this isn't so much a retreat as a calculated lure to draw Stingray in.
Keep going with the sound scanners.
It's nice as well that... oh, this is great. Oh, that's, again, such a lovely touch. As the submarine gets closer to its base, it puts its lights on, and there's Stingray does the same thing, to give the impression that as we're going deeper and deeper, it's getting darker and harder to navigate. And here we are, entering the tunnel that will lead to the subterranean sea, where...
Now what?
We can't lose it now. We're going in after it.
Where Maritimus has his base, and yep, we are following it, because we're feeling daring today. Even though...
Fantastic. We're increasing our depth all the time, Troy.
Yeah.
The little depth gauge only goes as far as, what, 15?
Stingray's ever stood up to.
If the pressure builds up any more, it may not stand up to it.
Watch the pressure gauges, phones.
And here's a shot of Stingray I never understand. How Stingray moves forward.
The depth gauge. How much deeper does this tunnel go?
What propels Stingray? I know they have the rotor at the back.
How about the hull?
But it's on as often as it's off.
I'll let you know.
Obviously, it's useful for turning, but yeah, I don't know what propels Stingray forward in times like this, when the rotor isn't moving.
Oh, and it doesn't sound very reassuring.
But this... do tell me if I'm alone in this.
Port observation panel, it's cracked. We've got to do
When you were a kid...
More of this.
Reduce speed, phones.
And you used to play with Stingray in the bath. Because I'm sure some of you out there would have played with Stingray in the bath. Did you used to try and recreate this scene by pushing Stingray under the water and going, oh no, the pressure, it's making the hull creak? I had the larger Matchbox Stingray toy that you could lift the lid off of and put one figure in, because there was only room for one figure, which was strange because there were 2 slots in it. But I seem to remember the other slot wasn't big enough to hold a second figure.
We've lost him.
I used to play with that Stingray in the bath and recreate this episode with the top part of the hull.
That accounts for the...
Oh, memories. Anyway,
A yellow sea.
Stingray has now entered the subterranean sea,
Seabed.
but the crew are suffering the effects of the pressure of such great depth. The hull is... I love the impression you get of just their stagehands rocking the hull in and out, the walls of the set.
If we don't find them soon, Phones, we'll have to turn back. Stingray won't take much more of this before she folds up.
Oh, and again, it makes these aliens seem so much more threatening when not only are they themselves so dangerous, but their environment is so dangerous, and clearly it's taking a huge toll, not only on Stingray itself, but on Troy and Phones. And it's wonderfully displayed in the actors' performances there. And there's Stingray approaching the city.
That underwater city must be their base. Phones, there's that missile-firing craft, and it's got us right in its sights.
No word on how Oink is reacting to the extreme pressure here, because he is along on this trip as well. Marina's doing okay, as she often does under pressure. But Troy and Phones Phones is out.
Has withstood the pressure, but from the attitude of the vessel, their crew haven't.
No, Phones is gone. Troy is almost out.
I must operate the Sting missile.
Must kill something.
Come on, boy.
Yeah, you've come all this way. You don't want to not kill something. Oh, Maritimus might just get the kill, though.
10, 9...
See, this is his downfall, ultimately. His dependency on counting. He has to do a full 10-second countdown. Every time. And as we're about to discover, sometimes it's easier just to go up to the controls and pull the lever, as Marina has done. Open fire on Maritimus' ship, and that's that. Presumably he is dead, but can't be sure.
Say, the cannon's exploded. If you can help me, Marina, we can destroy the city.
Yay!
Missiles. Red 004.
A nice spot of genocide, because why not? They knocked our radio off the wall in Marineville Control Tower. That's more than enough reason to blow up their city. And again, this is a lovely bit of special effects work as the starfish city is blown to bits. Multiple missiles. Marina's having a great day here. She loves a bit of blowing stuff up.
Okay, Marina, let's get out of here before Stingray collapses like a paper bag.
Oh. And yeah, the city seems to be well and truly destroyed. You would assume that Maritimus and Corder and Mighty Leader are no more, but certainly there are buildings on the perimeter that have survived. Even though the starfish seems to be bleeding into the water. That's quite a graphic image. So the idea has been raised over the years that maybe they might have survived. Maybe they could have come back for more. I certainly wish that they could have, because I love them. They are both everything I find funny in an alien race, but also a very credible threat.
We've all got to start work right away to equip ourselves for any event. Right? Dismissed.
And it just seems like such a shame to have hit such a brilliant alien race so early on in production. This is only episode 6 that was made. We have the incredible puppets for those aliens, but we also have the beautiful city. And we don't use it again. I know the shots of the city turn up in TB21. They were used as a home for the Crustovons, lobster people who were living in there.
The world.
But yeah, for the people of Solister, this was their one and only. Oh, I blew it. I blew it right at the end. Anyway, I may have blown it, but the big gun did not blow it. Oh, that is easily my favourite episode of the series, as I said, and I think it always will be. And to be fair, directed by David Elliott. Well done, David. Well done. That gets a round of applause. And I don't think I've ever given one of those on the randomizer before, but that gets a round of applause. It may be that this is an extremely simple story. And to be fair, it is. There are some underwater aliens. They're blowing stuff up. We're going to blow them up, and that'll take care of that. But I think it's... Who wrote this? Alan Fennell. Okay, yeah, good work there. Yeah, I'm going to give you the nod as well, Alan Fennell. But I think the fact that it is realised so superbly all the way along the line, the characters, the voice acting, the music, that big gun theme is not only one of my favourite pieces of Anderson music, it's probably one of my favourite pieces of music all time. The design work, everything in this episode just works. Everything in this episode is firing on all cylinders, and the result is what not only the best episode of Stingray, in my opinion, probably one of the best Anderson episodes of all time. If there's any other big gun fans out there, please let me know what you think of this one. I absolutely love it. Hope I'm not alone.
Marina. Aquamarina.
Yes.
I do love that song. I told you I taught myself to play that on the pianoforte.
Yes, you did. Yes,
Yeah,
you did
but
mention that.
unfortunately-
And I've told you, of course, that I've played the role, of course. One of only a handful of actors to have played Marina live on stage. I'll have you know.
You have, haven't you, of course?
Yeah.
Amazing.
I mean, it sort of feels a bit like a cheese dream now when I think about it, but it did actually happen.
Yeah.
And Lady Penelope.
Yes, you've played them all.
Yeah, Colonel White.
Yeah.
I think I was Jeff Tracy as well. Crikey.
Did you do Troy or Phones? You must have done one of the two. Do they not have a...
I don't think they did, you know.
Gosh. Anyway,
No, I think it was mostly...
I've recently recovered, a video version of that stage play, I believe. So I'm going to try and... Well, it's a bit corrupted, the file, so I'm going to try and sort it out. But it looks like it might have something, so I'll check.
How funny.
Anyway, sorry. Chris, thank you for Stingray.
Yes, thanks, Chris.
Hopefully that's cheered you up a little bit.
He looks a bit happier, doesn't he? It's difficult to tell, but...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Anyway, thanks, Chris. Chris will be back next week with another randomizer, and hopefully he'll be a bit less moody next week.
That's true. Well, we'll all be back next week, as will our lovely Podsterons, of course. Keep sending in your emails to podcast@gerryanderson.com. Do keep posting on our Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/Podsterons, or just search for Gerry Anderson Podcast Official Listeners Group, or hashtag us on podcast, hashtag Gerry Anderson Podcast, tag me, Richard and James, him, I'm Jamie Anderson, and him over there, Chris Dale. Eck.
Did you say hashtag us on podcast? Hashtag.
Oh, I don't know, did I?
Yeah.
There's a lot of words
You meant
there.
on Twitter. I mean, I thought you were just going completely off the rails, but you brought it back. It's very much like a sort of a mine cart tipping onto two wheels on a track
a bit, wasn't
for
it?
returning
You're right.
sparks.
Before writing itself, yes,
Yeah, beautifully
there
done.
we are.
Anyway, do all those things that Richard said, even if they didn't make sense, and make sure you email us at podcast@gerryanderson.com if you have
That's
any
it.
thoughts,
That's it.
questions, etc., etc.
Yeah,
We'd love
yeah.
to hear from you, and we'll
Always.
try our best to answer them.
Yes.
Oh, goodness me. Is it time we
Had a breather.
stopped?
Yeah, I think so. I need a cup of coffee.
I think everyone needs a break. So thanks for listening, Podsteron.
Yeah,
we'll
thanks.
be back in your clammy ears next week. And hopefully we've dried off the clammy book of Fab Facts by then too.
Ooh, yeah.
See you in 192. Ta-ta.
Bye.
Stage 1 complete.
Let's go.
Spectrum is green.
Actually, where Chris has thrown the book at me, it's
Oh, yes. Is
it's
it left a
dried it
mark?
off.
Oh, I
No,
see.
it's dried off.
It didn't actually hit you, did it? I didn't see from here.
No, he just missed me.
Hasn't left a scar.
It flew past. No, I mean, but what a story to tell. How did you get that scar? Well,
yeah, that's right. Well, do you know Chris Dale?
Randomeister from the
of course
Gerry
I know
Anderson
Chris Dale.
podcast.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Meek and mild on the outside, but he's a demon with a Fab Facts book.
Absolutely. You think that's out of character, but you should see what he gets up to on a weekend.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, I
Anyway.
know what he gets up to at weekend because I spent a weekend with him once.
In by the sea.
Yeah, that's right.
Where was it?
And shall I tell you what he gets up to? He just kind of sits around has an ice cream.
Yeah.
Does a bit of reading, bit of writing.
Well, I've got that lovely picture of you and him and Trevor and Simon having a pudding with some custard, I believe.
Yes, that's right. Now, I think that was the weekend we had dinner with Sylvester McCoy and Sophie Aldred.
I believe you could be right. I mean, this will be fascinating for anyone who's still listening.
Yeah. Well, we know they're not, so it's all right.
Yeah,
gosh, that was a night.
Gosh, yeah. I mean, we've done a few things with Chris, haven't we, over the years?
BFI.
Doctor Who things.
Yeah. It's been a while, but that's just the way it's been, isn't it?
Now I'm just flicking back. Here we go. I found the picture of you and Chris. It was the 20th of June, 2015.
Crikey!
And left to right, going around the table, it's Simon from Trevor and Simon.
That's right.
Chris Dale, you.
Yes.
Sophie Aldred, Sylvester McCoy.
Yes.
The lovely Deb, producer Deb, theatre Deb, who...
Deb Walters, that's right. She was there, yes.
And Claire Eden.
Claire Eden, that's right, yes.
And Chris...
And I picked up the bill.
Did you?
No, I didn't.
No, I was going to say. Chris has got a lovely empty thing which I think held ice cream. Anyway.
Yes, I think he had an ice cream, yes, I do remember
going into far too much detail.
Yeah, it really is.
So, shall we go?
Oh, all right then. Nothing left to say.
I want an ice cream. Bye.
Yeah, me too. Bye.
You have been listening to the Gerry Anderson Podcast. Wasn't it fun?
You have been listening to an Anderson Entertainment production.